The old pickup truck kicked up dust as it rolled down the cracked asphalt road. Tom Henderson gripped the steering wheel with calloused hands, his weathered face squinting against the afternoon sun. At 53, he'd seen plenty of hard times in this small Montana town, but nothing prepared him for what he was about to witness. Tom was heading to Murphy's feed store to pick up supplies for his cattle ranch. It was a routine trip he made every few weeks, always taking the same back road that cut through the poorer side of town. The houses here were different from his ranch, small, run-down trailers and old houses with peeling paint and broken fences. Most folks kept to themselves, and Tom respected that. Everyone had their struggles. But today was different. As his truck rumbled past a faded blue trailer with a sagging roof, Tom heard something that made his blood run cold. Screaming. Not the kind of screaming from kids playing in the yard, but desperate, terrified screaming that seemed to cut right through his chest. Tom slowed his truck and pulled over to the side of the road. The screaming was coming from inside the trailer, along with a man's angry voice shouting words that made Tom's jaw clench. He had heard that kind of anger before, many years ago, when he was just a boy in his own father's house. Through the broken window of the trailer, Tom could see movement. A man was stumbling around inside, clearly drunk even in the middle of the day. But what Tom saw next made him forget everything else. Two small children, a girl who looked about 8 and a boy who seemed maybe 10, were cowering in the corner of the living room. Their father, because Tom could see the resemblance in their faces, was towering over them with his fist raised. The man was clearly drunk, swaying on his feet, but his anger was focused and dangerous. Tom watched in horror as the man struck the little girl across the face. She fell backward, hitting her head against the wall. The boy tried to protect his sister, stepping in front of her, but he was too small, too young to do anything against a grown man's rage. In the corner of the room, Tom could see a woman, probably their mother, pressed against the wall with her hands covering her face. She was crying but doing nothing to stop what was happening to her children. Maybe she was too scared. Maybe she had tried before and failed. Tom didn't know, but he knew he couldn't just sit in his truck and watch. The memories came flooding back then like they always did in moments like this. Tom remembered being 7 years old, hiding under his bed while his own father raged through their house. He remembered the sound of his mother crying, the feeling of being completely helpless, completely alone. He had promised himself back, then, that if he ever had the chance to help a child in the same situation, he wouldn't turn away. Tom turned off his truck engine and stepped out onto the dusty road. His boots crunched on the gravel as he walked toward the trailer. With each step, the shouting got louder, and so did the children's cries. By the time he reached the front door, his hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. He raised his fist and pounded on the door hard enough to rattle it in its frame. The shouting inside stopped immediately. Tom could hear hushed voices, then footsteps approaching the door. When the door opened, Tom found himself face to face with Jake Morrison. Tom knew Jake by reputation. Everyone in town did. Jake was known for drinking too much, causing trouble at the local bar, and generally being someone people avoided. He was thin and wiry, with bloodshot eyes and the sour smell of cheap whiskey coming off him in waves. "What do you want?" Jake slurred, trying to stand up straight but swaying slightly. Tom looked past Jake into the trailer. The two children were still huddled in the corner, the little girl holding her cheek where she had been hit. Their eyes were wide with fear, and Tom could see bruises on their arms that looked like they had been there for a while. "I heard screaming," Tom said simply, his voice steady despite the anger building in his chest. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mind your own business, old man. What happens in my house is my business." "Not when it involves hurting children," Tom replied, taking a step closer to the door. At 6 feet tall and built like someone who had spent his life doing hard physical work, Tom was an imposing figure even at his age. Jake's expression changed, becoming more defensive. "Those are my kids. I'll discipline them however I see fit." Tom looked again at the children. The boy was now holding his sister, both of them trembling. The woman in the corner, their mother, was watching the conversation with desperate eyes, like she wanted to say something but was too afraid. "That's not discipline," Tom said quietly. "That's abuse." The words hung in the air between them, Jake's face turned red, and Tom could see him trying to decide whether to get angry or try to deny what was obvious to anyone with eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about," Jake finally said. "These kids need to learn respect. They need to know who's in charge." Tom had heard those same words from his own father 30 years ago. He had heard every excuse, every justification, for why a grown man would hurt a child who couldn't fight back. None of it had made sense then, and it didn't make sense now. "They're just children," Tom said. "They should be playing outside, going to school, having friends, not living in fear of their own father." Jake stepped back into the trailer, but he left the door open. Tom could see the children more clearly now. The girl had a cut on her lip and the boy's shirt was torn. There were toys scattered on the floor, but they looked old and broken like everything else in the small space. "Look," Jake said, his voice changing slightly, becoming more careful. "Maybe I had a few drinks today. Maybe I got a little worked up. But that doesn't give you the right to come into my home and tell me how to raise my kids." Tom stood in the doorway, looking from Jake to the children and back again. He could call the police, he knew that. He could call child services. But he also knew how these things went in small towns. There would be investigations and court dates and temporary placements, and meanwhile, these children would continue to live in this trailer with this man who saw them as targets for his anger. What if there was another way? Tom heard himself saying, the words coming out before he had fully formed the thought. Jake looked confused. Another way to what? Tom stepped fully into the trailer now, his presence filling the small space. The children looked up at him with curious eyes, like they couldn't quite believe that someone had actually come to help them. "What if I told you I could solve your problem and mine at the same time?" Tom said, his mind racing as he tried to work out the details of an idea that was still forming. Jake laughed again, but this time it was more nervous than mocking. "What are you talking about, old man?" Tom looked around the trailer. He could see empty beer bottles on the counter, unpaid bills scattered on a table, and the general look of a life that was falling apart. He could also see that Jake was the kind of man who would always choose the easy way out if it was offered to him. "I'm talking about a solution that benefits everyone," Tom said carefully. "Especially these children." The little girl was watching him now with something that might have been hope in her eyes. The boy was still protective of his sister, but Tom could see that he was listening to every word. Jake was getting impatient. "Stop talking in riddles. What do you want?" Tom took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change everything for all of them. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of the moment, the knowledge that some decisions can't be undone. "I want to make you an offer," Tom said simply. "An offer that could change all of your lives." Jake stared at him, clearly trying to figure out what Tom was getting at. The woman in the corner had stopped crying and was listening intently. The children seemed to sense that something important was happening, even if they didn't understand what. Tom looked one more time at the bruises on the children's faces, at the fear in their eyes, at the broken toys on the floor. He thought about his own empty ranch house, about all the rooms that had never heard children's laughter, about all the love he had never had the chance to give. "Tomorrow," Tom said, "I'm going to come back here and we're going to have a conversation. That will determine the future of these children. You might want to think tonight about what's really best for them." With that, Tom turned and walked back to his truck, leaving Jake standing in the doorway with his mouth open. As Tom drove away, he could see the children's faces in his rearview mirror, still watching him through the broken window. Tom knew he had just committed himself to something that would test every principle he had ever held about right and wrong. But as he thought about those two scared children, he also knew he was committed to seeing it through no matter what it took. Tom didn't sleep much that night. He sat on his front porch, looking out at the stars and thinking about what he was planning to do. His ranch stretched out in front of him. 800 acres of good grazing land, a sturdy house that felt too big for one person and more quiet than any place should have. He had built this life carefully over the years. After his own difficult childhood, Tom had focused on creating something stable and peaceful. He never married, never had children of his own. He told himself he was too set in his ways, too damaged by his past to be a good father. But sitting, There in the darkness, thinking about those two terrified children, he wondered if maybe he had just been waiting for the right moment. The next morning, Tom drove back to the trailer. This time he came prepared. In his truck, he had a leather folder containing papers his lawyer friend Bill had helped him draw up the night before. He also had an envelope with $5,000 in cash, money he had been saving to buy new equipment for the ranch. When Tom knocked on the door, it took a few minutes for anyone to answer. When Jake finally opened it, he looked even worse than the day before. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes were wrinkled like he had slept in them, and he smelled like he had been drinking all night. "You came back," Jake said, sounding surprised. "I told you I would," Tom replied. "Can I come in?" Jake hesitated, then stepped aside. The trailer looked different in the morning light. Smaller somehow, and more desperate. The children were sitting at a small table eating cereal from chipped bowls. They looked up when Tom entered, and he could see that the bruises on their faces had gotten darker overnight. The woman, their mother, was standing by the sink with her back to everyone. Tom could see her shoulders shaking slightly, like she was crying or trying not to cry. "Kids," Jake said roughly, "go outside and play." The children looked scared, but they did as they were told. As they passed Tom on their way to the door, the little girl looked up at him with those same hopeful eyes he had seen the day before. When they were gone, Jake sat down heavily at the table and gestured for Tom to do the same. The woman still hadn't turned around. "So," Jake said, "what's this big offer you were talking about?" Tom placed the leather folder on the table but didn't open it yet. "First, let me ask you something. Do you love those children?" Jake's face went red. "Of course. I love them. They're my kids. Then why do you hurt them?" The question hung in the air. Jake started to answer, then stopped. He ran his hands through his hair and looked around the trailer like he was searching for an excuse somewhere among the broken furniture and empty bottles. "It's not that simple," Jake finally said. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I lost my job 6 months ago. The bills keep coming. Maria there." He gestured toward the woman at the sink. "She's no help. And those kids, they just keep needing things. Food, clothes, school supplies. It never ends." "So you hit them," Tom said simply. "I don't mean to," Jake said, and for the first time, he sounded like he might actually mean it. "I just get so angry sometimes. Everything feels out of control, and they're the only ones who can't fight back." Tom felt a familiar pain in his chest. He had heard his own father say almost the same words once, during one of his rare moments of honesty. It didn't make the abuse okay, but it helped Tom understand that Jake wasn't a monster. He was just a broken man who had never learned how to deal with his own pain without passing it on to others. "What if I told you there was a way to end all of this?" Tom said. "A way for you to get the money you need and for those children to have a chance at a better life." Jake looked suspicious. "What kind of way?" Tom opened the folder and pulled out the papers inside. "I want to adopt your children," he said simply. The woman at the sink turned around suddenly. Her name was Maria, Tom remembered. She had dark hair and tired eyes, and she looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for too long. "What?" she whispered. "I want to adopt them," Tom repeated. "I want to give them a home where they'll be safe, where they'll never have to be afraid." Again. Jake laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "You can't just adopt someone's kids. That's not how it works." "Actually," Tom said, "it is how it works if the parents agree to it." He spread the papers out on the table. "These are legal documents. If you sign them, you give up your parental rights and I become their legal guardian. Eventually, I can adopt them officially." Maria took a step closer to the table. "You would do that? You would take care of them?" Tom looked at her, seeing the desperation in her eyes. "I have a big house on a ranch outside of town. They would have their own rooms, good food, a chance to go to school without worrying about what they'll find when they come home. They would be safe." "And what do we get out of it?" Jake asked. Tom had been waiting for this question. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope of cash. He placed it on the table next to the papers. $5,000, he said. Cash. Jake's eyes went wide. He reached for the envelope, but Tom put his hand on it first. This money comes with conditions, Tom said firmly. You sign these papers, you take the money, and you leave town. You don't come back. You don't try to contact the children. You don't cause any trouble. This is a clean break for everyone. Jake stared at the money like it was the answer to all his problems. Tom could practically see him calculating how long $5,000 would last, how many bottles it would buy, how many bills it would pay. I don't know, Jake said slowly. They're my kids. I brought them into this world. Yes, Tom said, and you've been hurting them ever since. Is that the life you want for them? Living in fear, getting hit whenever you have a bad day, watching their mother cry in the corner? Maria sat down at the table, her hands shaking. Maybe, she said quietly. Maybe it would be better for them. Jake looked at her sharply. You want to give away our children? I want them to be safe, Maria said, her voice getting stronger. I want them to have a chance. Look around, Jake. Look at what we're giving them now. This isn't a life. This is just surviving. Tom could see that Maria understood what he was offering. She might be scared and broken down, but she loved her children enough to want something better for them. I can't protect them from you, Maria continued, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. I've tried, but I can't. Every time you drink, every time you get angry, they pay the price, and I just stand there and let it happen because I'm too scared to stop you. Jake looked uncomfortable. He reached for the envelope again, and this time Tom let him take it. Jake opened it and counted the money, his hand shaking slightly. 5,000, he said. That's a lot of money. It's enough to start over somewhere else, Tom said. Away from here, away from the memories, away from the pattern you're stuck in. What about Maria? Jake asked. Tom looked at the woman sitting across from him. That's up to her. She can go with you, or she can stay and visit the children sometimes. But if she stays, she has to agree to the same conditions. No trying to take the children back, no causing trouble. Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I want to visit them, she said. Not right away, maybe. But someday when I've gotten my life together, I want them to know that their mother loved them enough to let them go. Tom nodded. That can be arranged. Jake was still staring at the money. How do I know you're not some kind of crazy person? How do I know you won't hurt them? It was a fair question, Tom thought. I guess you don't know for sure, he said. But what you do know is what happens if they stay here with you. You know that every time you drink, you're going to hurt them. You know that they're going to grow up thinking that's what love looks like. You know that they're going to be damaged by this, maybe forever. Tom leaned forward, his voice becoming more intense. I'm offering you a chance to break that cycle. I'm offering your children a chance to grow up without fear. Yes, you're taking a risk trusting me with them, but staying here with you isn't safe for them either. The trailer was quiet except for the sound of Maria crying softly. Outside, Tom could hear the children playing, their voices carrying through the thin walls. They sounded almost normal when they played, like regular kids who didn't have to worry about walking on eggshells in their own home. I need some time to think about this, Jake said finally. No, Tom said firmly. You don't get time to think about it. Either you sign these papers right now, or I walk out of here and call child services. They'll investigate, they'll find evidence of abuse, and they'll take the children anyway. But instead of going to a home where they'll be loved, they'll go into the foster system and you'll go to jail. Jake's face went pale. You wouldn't do that. Try me, Tom said. And Jake could hear in his voice that he absolutely would. Maria reached across the table and touched Jake's arm. Please, she whispered, for them. Do this one good thing for them. Jake looked at the papers, then at the money, then at his wife's tear-stained face. Tom could see him struggling with himself, part of him wanting to hold on to the control he had over his family, part of him knowing that Tom was right. If I sign these, Jake said slowly, I never see them. Again? Not unless they want to see you when they're adults, Tom said. And that will be their choice to make. The pen fell from Jake's hand onto the table with a small click. that seemed to echo in the silence of the trailer. He stared at his signature on the papers like he couldn't quite believe what he had just done. Tom carefully gathered the documents and placed them back in the folder. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He had just done something that most people would consider impossible. He had convinced a father to sign away his children for money. But looking at the bruises on those kids' faces, Tom knew it was the right thing to do. "It's done then," Maria said quietly. Her voice was strange, like she was talking to herself rather than to anyone else in the room. Jake grabbed the envelope of money and counted it again, his hands shaking. $5,000, he muttered. $5,000 for my kids. $5,000 for their freedom, Tom corrected him. Jake looked up sharply. "Don't make me out to be some kind of hero here. I just sold my children to a stranger." "No," Tom said firmly. "You just gave your children a chance at a life without fear. That takes courage even if it doesn't feel like it right now." But Jake wasn't listening anymore. He was stuffing the money into his pocket and looking around the trailer like he was already planning his escape. "I need to pack," he said. "I need to get out of here before I change my mind." Tom stood up from the table. "What about the children? Don't you want to say goodbye?" Jake stopped moving and looked toward the window where they could see the kids playing outside. The little girl was pushing her brother on an old tire swing that hung from a scraggly tree in the yard. They looked almost happy in that moment, like normal children who didn't have to worry about anything more serious than whether it was their turn on the swing. "No," Jake said finally. "It'll be easier for everyone if I just go. They're probably better off thinking I died or something." Maria made a small sound like a sob caught in her throat. "Jake, they're your children. You should at least explain—" "Explain what?" Jake interrupted. "That their daddy is such a failure that he had to sell them to pay his debts? That he's such a drunk that he can't stop hitting them? What exactly am I supposed to say to make any of this okay?" Tom watched this exchange with a heavy heart. He had hoped that maybe Jake would show some sign of genuine love for his children, some regret about what was happening. Instead, Jake seemed more concerned with his own guilt and shame than with what the children might need from him. "They'll have questions," Tom said. "When they're older, they'll want to know why their parents gave them up." "Then you tell them the truth," Jake said, zipping up a duffel bag he had pulled from a closet. "Tell them their father was a drunk who couldn't take care of them. Tell them they're better off without me." Maria was crying openly now. "I can't leave them like this," she said. "I can't just disappear without saying anything." Tom looked at her with something like respect. At least one of their parents cared enough to think about what the children would need. "You don't have to disappear," Tom told her. "The agreement is that you can't try to take them back, but visiting is different. When they're settled in, when they're ready, you can be part of their lives if you want to be." "What if they hate me for this?" Maria asked. "They might," Tom said honestly. "But they'll understand when they're older. Right now, they're too young to see that staying here would have destroyed them. Someday they'll realize that letting them go was the most loving thing you could have done." Jake threw the last of his clothes into the bag and slung it over his shoulder. "I'm leaving town tonight," he announced. "I've got a buddy in Nevada who said I could stay with him for a while." "What about your wife?" Tom asked. Jake looked at Maria like he was seeing her for the first time in years. "What about her? She can come with me or she can stay here. Makes no difference to me." Maria wiped her eyes and stood up straighter. "I'm not going with you, Jake. I think I need to figure out who I am when I'm not scared all the time." Jake shrugged like it didn't matter to him either way. "Suit yourself." Tom was amazed by Jake's coldness, but he was also relieved. The less attachment Jake had to this place and these people, the easier it would be for everyone to move on. "I need to talk to the children," Tom said. "I need to explain what's happening." "Good luck with that," Jake said bitterly. 8-year-olds don't usually understand business transactions. Tom ignored the comment and walked to the front door. Through the screen, he could see the children still playing in the yard. They looked so small and innocent, completely unaware that their whole world was about to change. "Amy! David!" Tom called out, using their real names for the first time. "Can you come inside for a minute?" The children looked at each other nervously, then slowly made their way to the trailer. Tom could see them checking their father's face as they entered, trying to gauge his mood and determine whether they were in trouble. "Sit down," Tom said gently, gesturing to the couch. "I need to talk to you both about something very important." Amy, the little girl, climbed onto the couch and pulled her knees up to her chest. David, the boy, sat on the edge of the cushion like he was ready to run if he needed to. Tom knelt down in front of them so he could look them in the eyes. Behind him, he could hear Jake moving around, gathering the last of his things. "Do you remember me from yesterday?" Tom asked. Both children nodded. Amy spoke up in a small voice. "You're the man who made Daddy stop yelling." "That's right," Tom said. "My name is Tom, and I live on a ranch outside of town. Do you know what a ranch is?" David answered this time. "It's like a farm, but with cows." "Exactly." Tom smiled. "I have lots of cows and horses too, and chickens, and a big dog named Rex who loves to play fetch." The children's eyes lit up slightly at the mention of animals. Tom could see that they were interested despite their nervousness. "Here's the thing," Tom continued. "Your parents have asked me to take care of you for a while. They think it would be good for you to live on the ranch with me." Amy looked confused. "Like a vacation?" Tom's heart broke a little at the innocence of the question. "No, sweetheart. More like a new home. Your parents think you'll be happier living with me." David's face darkened. "Are we in trouble? Is this because we were bad?" "No," Tom said, quickly. "You haven't done anything wrong. You're good kids. This is about giving you a chance to live somewhere where you'll be safe and happy." "But what about Mama and Daddy?" Amy asked, looking around the trailer. Before Tom could answer, Jake appeared in the doorway with his duffel bag. "Your Mama and Daddy are going away for a while," he said roughly. "Tom here is going to take care of you now." The children stared at their father in shock. David stood up from the couch. "Going away where? For how long?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, son. Maybe a long time." Amy started to cry. "I don't want you to go away. I want to stay here with you and Mama." Tom felt like his heart was being squeezed in a vice. These children had been abused and neglected, but Jake and Maria were still their parents. This was still the only life they had ever known. Maria came over and knelt beside Tom. She took Amy's small hands in hers. "Baby, listen to me. Do you remember how scared you get when Daddy yells? How you hide under your bed when he gets angry?" Amy nodded, still crying. "At Tom's house, you won't have to be scared anymore," Maria continued. "You can play outside whenever you want. You can laugh as loud as you want. You won't have to worry about making Daddy mad." "But I want you to come too," Amy sobbed. "I can't, baby. Not right now. But maybe someday I can come visit you at the ranch. Would you like that?" David was watching this conversation with the serious expression of a child who had grown up too fast. "Is this because Daddy hits us?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a weight. Tom could see Jake flinch, could see Maria close her eyes in pain. "Yes," Tom said simply. "It's because no child should ever have to be afraid in their own home." David nodded slowly, like this made sense to him. "Will you hit us?" "Never," Tom said firmly. "I promise you, I will never hurt you, not ever." Jake cleared his throat loudly. "I need to get going," he announced. "Traffic's going to be bad if I wait much longer." Tom couldn't believe how callous Jake was being, but he also realized that dragging this out would only make it harder. For the children. "Okay," Tom said, standing up. "Kids, why don't you go gather up your things, whatever toys or clothes you want to take with you?" Amy looked around the small trailer. "All of our things?" "Whatever you want," Tom assured her. "This is your stuff. You should take whatever makes you feel comfortable." The children went to their small shared bedroom and started putting their belongings into garbage bags, which seemed to be the only luggage available in the trailer. Tom watched them through the doorway, struck by how little they actually owned. A few changes of clothes, some broken toys, a couple of books with pages missing. While the children packed, Jake headed for the front door. He paused with his hand on the handle and looked back at Maria. "You sure you're not coming?" he asked. Maria shook her head. "I'm sure." Jake shrugged. "Your choice. Don't expect me to come back for you." "I don't," Maria said quietly. Jake opened the door, then stopped again. For a moment, Tom thought he might actually say goodbye to his children, might show some sign of emotion about leaving them forever. The drive to Tom's ranch took about 30 minutes, but it felt much longer with two silent children sitting beside him in the truck. Amy pressed herself against the passenger door, as far from Tom as she could get, while David sat in the middle, watching the landscape change from run-down neighborhoods to open farmland. As they drove, Tom tried to think of what to say. He had never been around children much, and he certainly had never been responsible for two traumatized kids who had just been separated from the only family they had ever known. Every word seemed important, but he couldn't find the right ones. "Are you hungry?" he finally asked. Both children shook their heads, though Tom suspected they were probably always hungry. From what he had seen at the trailer, regular meals weren't something they could count on. "Well, when we get to the ranch, Elena will probably have dinner ready anyway," Tom said. "Elena is my housekeeper. She's been working for me for about 10 years, and she makes the best fried chicken in 3 counties. Amy spoke up for the first time since they had left the trailer. "Is she nice?" "Very nice," Tom assured her. "She has grandchildren about your age. She's going to love meeting you." As they turned onto the long gravel driveway that led to the ranch house, Tom saw both children's eyes widen. The house was a big 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch and white railings. There were flower boxes under the windows and a big oak tree in the front yard with a tire swing hanging from one of the branches. "This is where you live?" David asked, sounding amazed. "This is where we live," Tom corrected him gently. Elena must have heard the truck coming because she was already standing on the front porch when they pulled up. She was a plump, gray-haired woman in her 60s with kind eyes and flour on her apron. When she saw the children climbing out of the truck, her face lit up with the biggest smile Tom had ever seen. "Well, hello there," she called out, hurrying down the porch steps. "You must be Amy and David. Tom told me you were coming to stay with us." The children hung back behind Tom, suddenly shy. Elena noticed their hesitation and crouched down to their level. "I know this is all very new and probably a little scary," she said in a gentle voice. "But you're safe here, and we're going to take very good care of you." Amy peeked out from behind Tom. "Do you really make good fried chicken?" Elena laughed. "The best you've ever tasted, I promise. Are you hungry?" This time both children nodded. "Good," Elena said, standing up. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour. That gives us time to show you around and get you settled in your rooms." "We get our own rooms?" David asked, surprised. "Of course," Tom said. "Come on, let me show you." They walked into the house, and Tom watched the children's reactions as they took in their new surroundings. The living room was large and comfortable, with overstuffed furniture and family photos on the mantel. The kitchen was bright and cheerful, with yellow walls and windows that looked out over the pastures where Tom's cattle grazed. "This is the biggest house I've ever seen," Amy whispered to her brother. Tom led them upstairs to show them their bedrooms. Amy's room was painted pale pink with white furniture and a quilt on the bed that Elena had made herself. There were stuffed animals arranged on the pillows and books on the shelves. "This is all mine?" Amy asked, touching the quilt with one finger. "All yours," Tom confirmed. David's room was next door, painted blue with a desk by the window and model airplanes hanging from the ceiling. Both rooms had large windows that looked out over the ranch, and both had their own small bathrooms. The children stood in the hallway between their rooms, looking overwhelmed. "I know it's a lot to take in," Tom said. "Why don't you put your things away and get washed up for dinner? Elena and I will be downstairs when you're ready." Tom and Elena went back to the kitchen, leaving the children to explore their new rooms. Elena immediately started fussing with dinner preparations, but Tom could tell she was worried. "How are they really doing?" she asked quietly. Tom told her about the bruises, about the fear in their eyes, about how they had flinched when he raised his hand to knock on their door earlier. Elena listened with a grim expression. "Those poor babies," she murmured. "Well, they're safe now. That's what matters." When the children came downstairs for dinner, they were clean but still wearing the same clothes they had arrived in. Tom made a mental note to take them shopping for new clothes the next day. Elena had prepared a feast: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and fresh biscuits. The children's eyes went wide when they saw all the food. "Is this all for us?" Amy asked. "Of course," Elena said. "Eat as much as you want." Tom noticed that both children ate carefully, taking small bites and watching the adults' faces as if they expected the food to be taken away at any moment. It broke his heart to realize that they had probably never been certain their next meal would come. "This is really good," David said politely. "Thank you, sweetheart," Elena beamed. "There's plenty more if you want seconds." After dinner, Tom showed the children around the rest of the ranch. They met Rex, his golden retriever, who immediately fell in love with both kids. They saw the barn where the horses lived, the chicken coop, and the pastures where the cattle grazed. "Can we pet the horses?" Amy asked. "Tomorrow," Tom promised. "Right now they're eating their dinner too." That first night was difficult. Tom tucked both children into their beds, but within an hour he heard crying coming from Amy's room. When he went to check on her, he found her huddled under the covers sobbing. "I want my mama," she cried. Tom sat on the edge of her bed, not sure what to do. "I know you do, sweetheart. It's okay to miss her. What if she forgets about me?" "She won't forget," Tom assured her. "Mamas never forget their babies." David appeared in the doorway, having heard his sister crying. Without asking permission, he climbed into Amy's bed and put his arms around her. "It's okay, Amy," he whispered. "I'm here. I won't let anything bad happen to you." Tom felt tears sting his own eyes as he watched this 10-year-old boy comfort his little sister. These children had been through so much, but they still had each other. The next few weeks were challenging for everyone. Amy had nightmares almost every night, waking up screaming and calling for her mother. David was quieter, but Tom could see him watching everything carefully, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Both children flinched whenever Tom moved too quickly or raised his voice, even when he was just calling to them from across the yard. They hoarded food in their rooms, hiding crackers and fruit under their beds like they were afraid there wouldn't be any more. Tom had to learn patience he never knew he possessed. When Amy spilled juice on the kitchen floor and immediately started crying and apologizing over and over, Tom knelt down beside her and helped her clean it up. "Accidents happen," he said gently. "Nobody's going to hurt you for spilling something." When David broke a glass while trying to help Elena with the dishes, he stood frozen with terror, waiting for punishment that never came. "It's just a glass," Elena told him calmly. "We have plenty more." Slowly, gradually, the children began to relax. Tom caught Amy laughing at Rex's antics one afternoon, then immediately looking guilty like she had done something wrong. David started asking questions about the ranch, about the animals, about how everything worked. The breakthrough came about a month after they arrived. Tom was in the barn helping one of his mares deliver a foal when David found him. "Tom?" David said quietly. Amy fell down and scraped her knee. "She's crying." Tom looked at the mare, who was in the middle of labor, then at David's worried face. "Can you stay here and watch Belle for me? Just make sure she's okay while I go help your sister." David's eyes went wide. "You trust me to watch the horse?" "I trust you completely," Tom said. When Tom came back 10 minutes later after bandaging Amy's knee, he found David sitting cross-legged in the straw, talking softly to the mare. "You're doing great, Belle," David was saying. "It's going to be okay. Tom says having babies is hard work, but you're really strong." Tom smiled as he watched this serious little boy taking care of his horse. When the foal was finally born, a beautiful chestnut filly, David's face lit up with wonder. "She's so little," he breathed. "Want to help me make sure she's healthy?" Tom asked. David nodded eagerly. Tom showed him how to check the foal's breathing. how to make sure she was nursing properly, how to tell if she was strong and healthy. "What should we name her?" Tom asked. David thought for a moment. "Hope," he said finally. "Because she's new and she gets to start fresh." Tom looked at this wise little boy and felt his heart swell with pride and love. Hope is a perfect name. That night. For the first time since they had arrived, both children slept through the night without nightmares. The next morning, Amy ran into the kitchen where Tom was drinking coffee. Tom, David said there's a baby horse in the barn." "That's right," Tom said. "Want to come meet her?" Amy nodded so enthusiastically that her pigtails bounced. She grabbed Tom's hand without thinking, then froze and looked up at him with surprise, like she couldn't believe she had done something so trusting. Tom squeezed her small hand gently. "It's okay," he said. "I like holding hands." As they walked to the barn together, Tom realized that something had shifted. The children were starting to feel safe. They were starting to. 2 years had passed since that life-changing day at the trailer, and Tom could hardly believe how much everything had transformed. The courthouse was buzzing with quiet activity on this particular Tuesday morning, but Tom barely noticed the other people waiting around them. His attention was focused entirely on the 2 children sitting beside him on the wooden bench. Amy, now 10 years old, was wearing a new blue dress that Elena had bought specifically for this occasion. Her hair had grown long and healthy, and she wore it in a neat braid down her back. She was swinging her legs nervously, her shiny black shoes catching the light from the courthouse windows. David, 12 now, and showing signs of the man he would become, sat up straight in his button-down shirt and tie. He had grown several inches in the past 2 years, and his face had lost the haunted look that had worried Tom so much in the beginning. Now he looked like what he was, a bright, confident boy who knew he was loved. "Are you nervous?" Tom asked. Them quietly. "A little," Amy admitted. "But good nervous, like when you're excited about something but also a little scared." David nodded in agreement. "It's like when Hope was being born. Scary but amazing at the same time." Tom smiled at the reference to their foal, who was now a spirited 2-year-old filly that David was training to ride. The children had a way of relating everything back to the ranch and their animals, which never failed to warm Tom's heart. "Mr. Henderson?" A court clerk approached them with a clipboard. "Judge Martinez is ready for you now." Tom stood up and straightened his own tie. He was wearing his best suit, the one he usually reserved for funerals and the occasional wedding. Today felt more important than either of those things. The adoption hearing was surprisingly simple, after all the legal complications of the past 2 years. Bill Mason, Tom's lawyer and longtime friend, had handled most of the paperwork. The state investigation had been thorough but ultimately favorable. Tom's home was deemed safe and appropriate, his financial situation was stable, and most importantly, it was obvious to everyone involved that the children were thriving in his care. "Mr. Henderson," Judge Martinez said from behind his bench, "in all my years on this bench, I've rarely seen children who have made such a remarkable transformation. The reports from their teachers, their doctor, and the social worker all indicate that Amy and David are happy, healthy, and well-adjusted children." Tom felt a surge of pride. It hadn't been easy getting to this point. There had been months of home visits from social workers, meetings with lawyers, and psychological evaluations, for all 3 of them, but every hurdle had been worth it to reach this moment. "Amy and David," the judge continued, addressing the children directly, "do you understand what's happening today?" Both children nodded solemnly. "Can you tell me in your own words?" "The judge asked kindly. David spoke first. "Today Tom officially becomes our dad. We've been calling him that for a while already, but today it becomes legal." "And how do you feel about that?" Amy bounced slightly in her chair. "Happy. Really, really happy. Tom is the best dad in the whole world." Judge Martinez smiled. "And, David, how about you?" "I feel grateful," David said thoughtfully. "Grateful that someone wanted us enough to fight for us. Grateful that we get to be a real family now." Tom had to blink back tears at his son's mature words. David had always been wise beyond his years, but the confidence and happiness in his voice was something that had developed slowly over their time together. "Mr. Henderson," the judge said, "do you solemnly swear to love, protect, and care for these children as if they were your own flesh and blood?" "I do," Tom said firmly. "I've already been doing that for 2 years, but yes, I absolutely do." "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I hereby grant this petition for adoption. Amy and David, you are now officially Amy Henderson and David Henderson. Congratulations to your new family." The gavel came down with a final, satisfying thud, and suddenly Amy was launching herself into Tom's arms while David hugged him from the side. Tom held both his children close, feeling a completeness he had never imagined possible. After the courthouse, they went to Amy's favorite restaurant to celebrate. Over hamburgers and milkshakes, the children chattered excitedly about telling Elena the news, about calling their friends from school, about having the same last name as Tom on all their school papers. "Can we call Elena and tell her?" Amy asked, bouncing in her booth seat. "As soon as we get home," Tom promised. "She's probably wearing a hole in the kitchen floor waiting to hear how it went." Elena had been almost as nervous about the adoption as Tom was. She had grown to love the children as much as he had, and the thought that something might go wrong and they might be taken away had kept her up nights for weeks. The drive home to the ranch was filled with laughter and plans for how they would celebrate that evening. Elena had promised to make Amy's favorite chocolate cake, and David had requested her famous barbecue ribs. It was going to be a feast. As they pulled into the driveway, Tom saw Elena standing on the front porch with her hands pressed to her heart. The moment she saw their faces, she knew the news was good. She ran down the porch steps faster than Tom had seen her move in years. "Well?" she called out before they were even out of the truck. "It's official," Amy shouted, jumping down from the truck cab. "We're Hendersons now." Elena grabbed both children in a huge hug, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, my babies. My sweet babies, I'm so happy for all of you." Tom stood back and watched his family celebrate, feeling a peace settle over him that he had never experienced before. These were his children now, legally and officially. No one could take them away. They belonged to each other completely. That evening, as promised, Elena prepared a feast. The dining room table was set with her best china, and she had even picked flowers from her garden for a centerpiece. Tom couldn't remember the last time the big house had felt so full of life and joy. During dinner, David grew thoughtful. Dad, he said, still getting used to the new official title. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. Anything. Do you ever think about our real parents, about what happened to them?" Tom set down his fork and considered the question carefully. They had talked about Jake and Maria many times over the past 2 years, but not often recently. The children seemed to have made peace with their past. "I do think about them sometimes," Tom said honestly. "I think about your mother especially. I hope she's doing well, wherever she is." Maria had kept her word about staying away during the children's adjustment period, but she had sent letters occasionally through Bill the lawyer. The letters were always brief but full of love, telling the children how proud she was of them and how happy she was that they were safe. Tom had shared these letters with the children, and they had helped Amy and David understand that their mother's decision to let them go had come from love, not abandonment. "I got a letter from your mother last month," Tom said. "I was waiting for the right time to share it with you. Today seems like that time." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Amy and David exchanged glances, then moved closer together as Tom opened the letter. "She says she's been clean and sober for 8 months now," Tom read. "She's working at a diner in Colorado and living in a small apartment. She says she thinks about you both every day and that she's proud of the people you're becoming." Kyo wiped her eyes with her napkin. "Is she happy?" "She says she's learning to be happy," Tom read. "She says the hardest part is knowing she can't undo the past, but the best part is knowing you're both safe and loved." David was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" "I don't know," Tom said. "That's up to you. When you're Older, if you want to meet with her, we can arrange that. But there's no pressure either way. You get to decide what feels right for you. What about our father? Amy asked quietly. Tom's expression grew sad. This was the harder conversation, the one he had been dreading. Your father, Jake, he died about 6 months after you came to live with me. He was in a car accident. Both children were quiet, processing this information. Tom watched their faces carefully, ready to comfort them if they needed it. Was he drinking? David asked. Yes, Tom said gently. He was. David nodded slowly. I'm sad that he died, he said. But I'm not sad that we didn't have to live with him anymore. Amy looked at her brother, then at Tom. Is that bad? That I'm not really sad? No, sweetheart, Tom assured her. Your feelings are whatever they are. There's no right or wrong way to feel about this. Elena reached over and squeezed Amy's hand. Your father was sick, she said gently. Sick in a way that made him hurt people. It's okay to be sad that he died, and it's also okay to be relieved that he can't hurt anyone anymore. After dinner, the children went outside to play with Rex while Tom and Elena cleaned up the dishes. Through the kitchen window, Tom could see them throwing a ball for the dog, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. They're good kids, Elena said, following his gaze. The best, Tom agreed. I can't imagine my life without them now. They saved you as much as you saved them, you know, Elena observed. Tom considered this. She was right. Before Amy and David came into his life, he had been drifting through his days without much purpose beyond maintaining his ranch. Now every day was full of meaning. Homework, too.